lot of donations through donations in kind, transport, packing the food, so that we make sure that any money that is raised is used to benefit the population on the ground. So far, we've distributed food to more than 100,000 people, focusing on the most impacted county, which is Marsabit and Isiolo, and we'll work through that. So very delighted that Kepsa is coming for Pamoja Tungane version 2.0, and I'm looking forward to seeing all private sector really taking this call and coming together. When I met the Deputy President, he said that although you've already given some money, you need to give more, and I'm sure I will be part of the future contributions that will be committed this morning. But I just wanted to emphasize, there's no one who can do this alone. It's all about partnership, has been emphasized this morning. And both to tackle the immediate issue, which is the drought and also the emergency problem in terms of food shortage, but also to tackle the more long-term piece, which is to ensure that we eliminate the problem. And during the COP27 climate conference, I'm sure we'll make our own commitment. Certainly, as representing Safaricom, I'll be joining other Kenyans, but also African business leaders in making a commitment to climate action with a company level action that will take as individuals, as individual corporate, but also as Kenya. In conclusion, Your Excellency, I urge my fellow leaders across the private sector not only to rally behind the Pamoja Tungane campaign under the stewardship of Kepsa, but also to think about the more long-term measures that we can implement together to ensure we end once and for all the suffering of Kenyans during these droughts. As the inspirational Kenyan proverb goes, sticks in a battle are unbreakable. Together we are stronger. Together we can transform lives. Thank you very much.
Next will be the President Representative to Kenya United Nations Development Programs, Mr. Anthony. Okay. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, fine, it's okay.
Your Excellency, the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, all protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Azeb Asrat, the Rotary District Governor covering 4 countries, Kenya, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Eritrea. I'm here accompanied by senior Rotarians, including the incoming District Governor, Leonard Itau, and District Governor nominee, Dr. Joe Kamau. I'm not new to this country. 29 years ago, my first UN assignment with the World Food Programme was to respond to the drought. And now coming back again, you know, seeing the drought, especially when we traveled to Isiolo and Marsabit, what I saw really put me in awe, saying that how long are we going to talk about drought and not getting sustainable solutions? Rotary, a global network of 1.4 million volunteers and philanthropists who see a world where people unite and take action to create a lasting change. Rotary, which is in over 200 countries, has been in existence for the past 117 years. We have been a reliable partner in responding to humanitarian emergencies and involved in rehabilitation and development activities, making an impact and change lives. We are here today for 2 very important issues. One of youth employment, and 2, the cyclical droughts that hit the Horn of Africa, with specifics to focus here in Kenya. Currently, we are facing with a drought situation that hit 23 counties, with additional 9 at risk of starvation. We are talking here about 4 million people at risk. Their household assets have been depleted, water sources have dried up, livelihoods wrecked. We were recently in Isiolo and Marsabit, accompanied with skilled professionals from 21 clubs that allowed us to see the gravity of the drought in communities, especially in schools. The lack of water intertwined with food insecurity has put unbearable challenges to schools and communities at large. Those households are struggling to meet ends, especially what we saw in schools, the nutritional deterioration in school children is very worrisome. Actually, I would like to take this opportunity, Your Excellency. Let's put back school feeding programs in impoverished communities. Because back in the years, school feeding was at the center of the government's responsibility. Now going to Kabira, Korogocho, and the other slum areas in Kongware, in schools only, what you see is children are dropping on their desks because of lack of food and not having anything in their tummies. So I think it's high time, if we are talking of the youth, we have to cultivate the minds of the youth now and not later. Rotary, in partnership with government and private sector and UN and others, have been prioritizing on how we could respond to such an emergency. This past Saturday, the Rotary Club of Parklands, together with the Sunrise Walkers and a number of partners, was able to flag off humanitarian supplies tracked to the drought-affected countries. As we work with Safaricom, M-Pesa Foundation, Kepsa, and UN, I would like to emphasize the importance of coordination that will avoid duplication, but rather help create the modality of effective use of our meager resources. Before I wind up my remarks, I would like to highlight that the Rotary District 9212 is committed to work with partners on a long-term impactful solutions to this life-threatening drought that happens in cycles over the past more than 50 years. While responding to the drought, I think it's high time to put on our agenda the rehabilitation and development interventions that will be required to bring back households into their livelihoods. We need to bring them at speed, when it comes to really getting people into their feet to meet their ends. As far as youth is concerned, I'm really happy to hear from you, because I have been to 51 clubs within the different counties, and I'll continue to do that until I meet the 141 clubs. And what I see is that the youth is our future. Unless we work today on them, building their capacity and training them and putting them to work, our countries, Africa, will be at risk. It will be at risk. It's high time that we do that. This year, we will journey with you, not only this year, but subsequent years as well. But I would like to say this. Our district has this theme for this year. Let's march together. When I saw Pamoja Tungani, and it's exactly the same. So I'm really heartwarmed, and thank you for listening to me. Let's work together and journey to bring Africa to another level. Thank you.
Your Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, CSs, captains of industry, friends, my name is Anthony Ngororano. I am the UNDP, United Nations Development Programme, resident representative in Kenya. It's such a pleasure to be here to discuss the issue of the day, which of course has two faces. One, the short term, which is of course the question of drought, and fundamentally how do we prevent this? And then the longer term issue, which is really around Kenya's most valuable asset, its youth. Data that is available suggests that in terms of the costs of the drought, we're looking at approximately 2.7% of GDP. Now, that's obviously something that has to be taken against longer term goals, which in the case of Vision 2030 means a big deal. And it's known that this can be mitigated. This can be mitigated through a number of things. First and foremost, targeted investment, targeting disaster preparedness, building resilience, and ensuring, of course, that all stakeholders are involved. I think from the perspective of preparedness measures, it's very clear that there remains a gap between early warning and policy action. And we say this mindful that a lot of the data that we have today was made available in November 2021, but because of this gap, we didn't see commensurate action. In partnership with Kepsa, UNDP has been focusing on the preconditions for boosting economic resilience and green transition. And this obviously has focused on the groups that we are seeing today at the center, at the epicenter of the drought. The principal policy challenge, however, and this has been enumerated by a number of previous speakers, lies around how do you balance this immediate need with dealing with the structural aspects. And maybe I'd like to talk a little bit about that in terms of work we've been doing with Kepsa, along with a number of you here. In terms of the immediate needs, over the last 10 years, alongside NDMA, we've worked to build the resilience of 377,000 communities. Be that as it may, as we've seen, this is work that still has significant headspace, and we really need to keep moving while building on what's already there. In terms of the structural aspect, maybe two or three things. One, with regards to MPT4, we have for the first time a standalone disaster risk management pillar. This is a major advance and is the fruit of collaboration of many of us in this room. Also, and I'll take this opportunity, Your Excellency, Deputy President, in terms of pending items, we have for almost a decade the National Bill on Disaster Risk Management that hasn't been passed by Parliament. And this is absolutely critical for us to move, because without it, we run the risk of losing focus and not having the sufficient lever in terms of both political and financial resources to deal with the problems in front of us. Beyond that, UNDP, the UN family, and many of you in this room, I know we are joined in working together on fast-tracking the enabling environment for businesses to flourish, both at national, but more importantly, at county level. And I think one of the things that comes to mind, if you will, some of the things that UNDP, alongside other members of the UN family, are pivoting our programs towards. You know, development has changed and we have to change with it. And so this inspires maybe the 3 or 4 points I'll put in closing. The first is with regards to decision making. And the reality remains, and I look at CEO Safaricom here as one of the key stakeholders, we are still working for the most part in terms of decision making with insufficient amounts of data informing how decisions are made. And with regards to this, we are working and seeking to forge new partnerships around the use of non-traditional means of data. And here we look at essentially all the dividends of what we call the fourth industrial revolution. How can we deploy artificial intelligence, high-resolution satellite imagery, machine learning, and so on and so forth, to get a multidimensional, much richer sense of how development is moving. As of now, as you know, we rely on instruments that are basically renewed every 3 to 4 years, and that unfortunately cannot hold for long. So data and analytics is really the core, and I think both at national level and then at county level, we need to get a better sense of the economic assets we have, I'll give here an example of something with the Food and Agriculture Organization we're looking towards under the lead of Ministry of Agriculture, which is a census of livestock. We haven't got numbers, right? And these are things that are actually within our reach. Secondly, we work on supporting the emergence of a resilient and robust innovation ecosystem. Many of whom, of course, are in this room and are in one way or another linked to large firms. This remains, if you will, the single most powerful repository of skills, of energy, of assets, of intellectual resources. And I think working together with your new administration, Mr. Deputy President, is, I think, one of the main things we're going to be doing. Last and not least, the issue of sustainability. I think this really belies the crux of the problem, and that's that, you know, billions and billions of shillings over years and years leaves us where we are today. And I think here maybe two things, and one that has been mentioned by a number of you, is the question of inclusion. Without having the youth around the table, we're really starting, if you will, the race from behind. At UNDP, we work with a number of counties, namely Isiolo and Tana, on something we call youth sounding boards. This is something that a number of our partners, including the European Union and others, have come and said to us, let's see how this works. And you know, I reach out to all those of you who want maybe to learn from the modest successes that we've had in this. Beyond that is the story of the region and the continent more broadly. And here again, I look towards Your Excellency, Mr. CS, but also the rest of the colleagues are on Youth Connect. Youth Connect is a huge opportunity that between October and November next year, we'll see youth from 28 African countries converging in Kenya to look at the fundamentals of job creation. Why? Because we don't have to go very far for solutions. We don't have to go very far for partnerships. You know, I think within the context, for example, of the East African community, we have really important, latent, and real opportunities to exploit. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you.
Mheshimiwa Naibu Rais, mawaziri, viongozi wa biashara na marafiki, hamjambo. My name is Stephen Jackson. I'm the United Nations Resident Coordinator here in Kenya, and it's my great honor to issue a call for action. Let me begin, Your Excellency, by saying that I've visited many parts of the drought-affected region over the last year and a half, but as recently as September, I spent a day and a half driving from far up on the Ethiopian border with Turkana County down to Lodwar, and in that day and a half, I saw not one single live cow, not one. Many dead ones, a few camels, but not very many. So when His Excellency, the President, talks of 2.4, 2.5 million lost livestock at a cost of about $1 billion US, about 100 billion Kenya shillings, I know that he speaks the truth. I spoke with people in Turkana left destitute and on the edge of starvation by this literally unprecedented drought. Your Excellency, there can be no more misleading phrase in the English language than the phrase natural disaster. This is not a natural disaster at all. It's unnatural in at least two ways. Number one, because it is without precedent. It's like nothing we've ever seen before in this part of the world. And it is also unnatural because it is not from nature. It is man-made. It's the direct cause, it's directly caused by the climate emergency, which in turn has been caused by 150 years of energy profligacy and the use of fossil fuels in the industrialized world. So Kenya did not cause this crisis, but Kenya suffers it. And so my first call to action, Your Excellency, we mentioned already COP27, a very powerful message needs to come from this part of the world to the leaders of the industrialized world to say, change your habits. We are suffering what you have done, and we are suffering greatly. Going forward, this region is going to be faced by droughts that are more recurrent, more enduring, and deeper than ever before. They will create an omnipresent threat that menaces the lives and the livelihoods of whole peoples, cultures, and ways of life. And as of now, 5 failed rainy seasons and looking down the barrel of a 6th in March next year, we already have 4.5 million Kenyans within, by the way, 25 million souls across the Horn of Africa whose lives and livelihoods are deeply threatened. Now, for a year and more, the government of Kenya at national and at devolved county level has been working valiantly to meet urgent needs. And I really want to salute the determined leadership of His Excellency President Ruto and you, sir, Your Excellency, the Deputy President. Since coming into office, you have led and led from the front, and that has made an enormous difference already. So, asante sana. I also want to salute the action of international and national partners, some 89 who come together through the Drought Flash Appeal that we launched this time last year. Through that appeal, we've been able to reach about 1 million of those 4.5 million. But you can do the maths, that's less than a quarter of them. Between national government and county government and those 89 partners in the Flash Appeal, we've each been able to mobilize about 20 billion shillings, 20 billion from Kenya government side, 20 billion from international partner side, 40 billion. It's a lot of money, it's not nearly enough. And that's why we come together today, and it's why we turn to 2 additional powerful constituencies, the leadership of Kenya's valiant private sector and to the Kenyan public to issue this call for action. Let me talk about some opportunities before I close with that call for action. There are many ways in which both the private sector and the Kenyan public can engage. You can put your support through us, through the United Nations Flash Appeal that Your Excellency, you and I will relaunch for 2023 in the coming weeks. You can put your support through Pamoja Tuungane, the platform that was launched in April and that we're launching as 2.0 today. You can put your support through local partners, trusted local partners like the Kenyan Red Cross with really strong community links and a proven track record. What kinds of support can you give? As the private sector, if you're giving direct support, I would appeal to you to focus on supporting cash transfer. That's the quickest, cheapest, most efficient, most direct, most dignified, and most accountable way of helping. But you can also, pole sana, you can also think about in-kind support. But if you do, please make it for under-supported need. School supplies, education suffers badly during a drought. Books, school bags, but also things as basic as sanitary towels for girls. And I also want to join with my sister from Rotary Foundation in reminding you about the importance of school feeding. When I was in Turkana, I heard moving testimonies about how important school feeding is as a lifeline, not just to our students, but even beyond them into the communities. Going beyond the immediate need, and my brother, Ndugu Yangu, Tony Gororano from UNDP has already talked about the long-term challenge. We're not just talking about a short-term emergency. We're talking about a turning point in the livelihoods of something like 1/4 to 1/2 of the population of Kenya. We have to ask ourselves some very hard existential questions about the sustainability long term of some traditional forms of livelihood. And we have to find solutions long term in terms of livelihoods where, as we already said, $1 billion of asset base has simply been wiped out. So I would also invite private sector partners to join in the conversation, a strategic national and international push to create resilient livelihoods in the Assal counties through things like outcome funds on water, on food systems. And I want to just point out, before I begin to wind up with my call for action, a little bit of a paradox. If we look north of the border, in Somalia, which has been affected not just by recurrent drought, but also by instability and conflict, over 30 years, Somalia has managed to build an extraordinary livestock export industry to the Gulf and to the Middle East. Why not Kenya? Why can't we do that? So there is opportunity in crisis we can start to reinvent. All of this needs to be well managed, and I would invite the private sector partners around the table to think about establishing some kind of small board or task force to ensure efficiency and accountability in what we launch today. So let me issue my call to action. As always, the beautiful Swahili language has an appropriate proverb, doesn't it always? Ajizi ni nyumba ya njaa. Indecision, inertia, sloth is the house of hunger. So we must be urgent and immediate in our actions. I call today on the private sector to engage beyond small gestures of corporate social responsibility that you can always do. Go further, dig deeper to mobilize real resources and find solutions. I call on the private sector to engage now, urgently, to help us meet these humanitarian needs measured in the tens of billions of Kenya shillings. And I call on the private sector to join with the government of Kenya, with you, Your Excellency, the Deputy President, and with international partners to help find long-term solutions to help Kenya and Kenyans adapt to the harsh realities of this climate emergency. Join in these public-private partnerships that you mentioned, Excellency, such as for the water sector, because beyond anything else, this is a water emergency. Rain-fed agriculture is over. We have to have irrigation-fed agriculture. Focus your energy and expertise on these, on helping realize resilient new livelihoods and opportunities through the green transition. And I call on all Kenyans in the broad public, rich or poor, think of that spirit of Harambee that has always animated Kenyan society to support your brothers and your sisters who are suffering very deeply. And finally, I call on the international community. You've already done a lot, but you need to do much, much more. So support us through the flash appeal for 2023 that Your Excellency, you and I will renew in just a few short weeks. Asanteni.
Very much. So, Deputy President, those are the partners we're working with, and they're all going to be mobilizing the resources from where they stand, the UN side, the Rotary side, and then the private sector side. So let me invite my good friend, Ms. Rebecca Miano, who we have been sitting together in the UN Global Compact Kenya board, and we'll miss her. And we've been sitting in that board with Stephen Jackson, with Flora Mutahi, and a few others were in the room. But she understands sustainability, so you have got good hands with you. And I think as we're talking about the long term, she will really, really help us to really put this together so that we are not here again. And then after that, she can invite the Deputy President who will make the call of action. And then we'll see if there are a few pockets that would like to add to what you received last week from the private sector. and see if we can top a little bit and continue to encourage. Some will be commitments. Some of the people who are here are already doing a lot, as I said and I mentioned, but I'm sure there'll be a few willing to say we can top up from what you got last week, and we continue to do that. And it's a 1 year, so we'll keep calling you as we continue to collect more and more together as partners. Karibu, Rebecca.
My colleague, CS Ababu Namwamba, and all the phenomenal men and women in this room, good morning. Good morning. First, allow me to thank His Excellency for being here, also to thank Kepsa for convening this meeting, and to you all for heeding this call to action on the unfolding drought situation. I took oath of office last week, fully cognizant of the difficult situation our country is facing in view of the prolonged drought situation. I also recognize the valued partnership between the government and the private sector, and greatly appreciate your continued contribution to ongoing drought response and the interventions there. Kenya is among the Horn of Africa countries experiencing the worst hunger crisis in over 4 decades. We have already had 4 consecutive failed rain seasons, and as earlier projected, the October rains are already delayed. This will most likely be our 5th failed season. Next year's forecast is also grim and pointing towards a worse situation before it gets better, because it will. Currently, 20 arid and semi-arid land counties and another 45 wards in 9 additional counties affected by drought. And Your Excellency, the ASAL counties are increasing, but we do hope there will be sustainable solutions and measures to alleviate this so that the whole country does not turn into ASAL. Loss of livelihoods as a result of crop failure, livestock mortalities, and declining livestock market prices, and even high prices of food and other consumer goods are undermining household purchasing power and worsening the food security. This has left more than 4.3 million fellow Kenyans requiring immediate relief, and the number is expected to rise as the situation deteriorates. We have also lost more than 2.5 million livestock as pasture and water become harder to access. Drought risk management, ladies and gentlemen, requires a multi-stakeholder approach. With support of partners, the government has in the last few weeks made concerted efforts to mitigate the effects of drought. However, a lot still needs to be done to meet the needs of the affected population. This includes more than 1 million children below 5 years, the pregnant and lactating women that require treatment for acute malnutrition. Since drought was declared a national disaster in September last year, the national government has spent more than 12 billion shillings to cushion lives and livelihoods. Interventions have been in terms of relief food, emergency relief cash transfers, school feeding programs, cash transfers under the Hunger Safety Net program, water response interventions, and livestock offtake. I know that county governments have also been intervening in areas of food assistance and scale-up of cash transfers. We've also had livestock feeds, vaccination and treatment, water tracking, and rehabilitation of water facilities. We estimate that the private sector and other non-state actors, including development partners, UN agencies, and NGOs, have plugged in a substantial amount of money in various drought